For centuries, humanity remained a footnote in the galactic ledger. The galaxy was ancient, older than Earth's first civilizations by millions of years. Long before humans took their first steps beyond the moon, countless empires had risen and fallen among the stars. The current dominion belonged to a select few species that had mastered faster than light travel when humanity was still lighting campfires in caves. They called themselves the Galactic Order, an elite council of the most powerful civilizations, who claimed to safeguard galactic peace, but in truth maintained their dominance through bureaucracy, coercion, and quiet conquest. When humanity finally made contact, we were met not with celebration, but with condescension. The Order allowed Earth limited access to the stars, one system at a time, under strict regulation. Technological trade was capped, military advancement forbidden, and interstellar communication tightly monitored. Human colonies were subject to Order inspectors. Our ships required transponders that broadcast our species rank. And our scientists were banned from studying core hypertech principles without alien supervision. We weren't equals. We were tolerated. Behind the polite diplomacy of the Order's emissaries was a smug certainty that humans would never pose a threat. And for a time, they were right. Humanity spread slowly, building colonies on fringe worlds with limited resources. Each outpost grew under the careful eye of alien overseers who spoke of peace but acted like wardens. 1,000 small humiliations accumulated. Mining rights revoked without cause. Human diplomats snubbed in council meetings. Entire colonies erased from maps after environmental interventions. By the Order's enforcement arm. And through it all, Earth remained outwardly obedient, but pressure builds. Beneath the surface of every rule and every restriction, resentment simmered. Human scientists reverse, engineered forbidden tech in underground labs. Military veterans trained militias under the guise of planetary security forces. Rogue AI emerged in dark data nets, processing alien doctrine and dissecting it with cold precision. What the Galactic Order mistook for weakness was adaptation. What they thought was compliance was calculation. Every colony that learned to survive with less, every smuggled archive of alien tactics, every encrypted network of resistance, all of it fed into something greater than rebellion. It laid the foundation for revolution, and then came the final insult. A minor border skirmish erupted near the Kepler Verge, where a human research vessel was destroyed by an Order patrol claiming illegal navigation. The evidence was falsified, but the Order refused to apologize. Earth demanded a tribunal. The Order laughed. In that moment, the illusion of diplomacy cracked. There was no justice in their galaxy, only control. Humanity, once seen as divided and docile, had something the ancients could never comprehend: the ability to unify under pressure, to forge steel in the fire of adversity. The spark hadn't yet lit the flame, but it hovered in the air, thick and electric. The shackles were still on, but the hands that bore them had begun to clench into fists. The Order had spent centuries underestimating us. They thought the fire had gone out of the human spirit. They forgot that even a small spark, when placed in the right place, can ignite an inferno. And humanity, bruised but unbroken, was ready to burn down the lies that held the galaxy in place. It began not with a grand declaration or a fleet mustering at the edge of a star system, but with a single ship, a single captain, and a single choice that echoed through the cosmos like a thunderclap in the silence of space. Captain Elias Wren of the Earth-flagged freighter Ardent Dawn was a man known for his strict adherence to duty and a fierce loyalty to his crew. Stationed along the disputed trade corridors near the Proxus Rim, The Ardent Dawn was part of a humanitarian mission, delivering vital supplies to a struggling colony on Lysari Prime, a world that had suffered a planetary system malfunction due to a blockade enacted by the Galactic Order. Officially, the blockade was a quarantine imposed after a minor outbreak of a xenopathogen. Unofficially, it was punishment. Lysari's governor had refused to grant mining rights to a dominant order species, the Ixari. The blockade had starved the planet for 3 months, despite the disease being cured within 2 weeks. When Captain Wren approached the blockade line, the Order patrols hailed him and denied passage. The Order's authority was clear. Crossing would be an act of aggression. Captain Wren's orders were equally clear. Get the supplies through, peacefully if possible. He opened a direct channel to the Order fleet's admiral, a 6-limbed Varnathi noble who barely concealed his contempt as he dismissed Wren's request. "You are inferior life forms," the alien sneered. "You do not dictate the rules of this galaxy." That was the moment. That single sentence, broadcast live to a dozen colonies, 1,000 ships, and countless ears across the Dayton, changed everything. Wren didn't reply. He simply issued one order: shields up, accelerate to ramming vector. The Ardent Dawn was a freighter, not a warship. It had minimal defenses, no offensive systems, and barely enough shielding to survive a micrometeor storm. But Wren knew his ship. He knew its mass, its fuel load, and its speed, and he knew that it would only take a few seconds for a full burn impact to breach the Order's forward cruiser. The Order, in their arrogance, didn't think he would do it. They believed no human would risk death to deliver food. They were wrong. The Ardent Dawn smashed through the blockade's lead vessel, sacrificing itself and igniting a chain of explosions that disabled 2 other cruisers and tore open a corridor through which relief supplies from a secondary freighter slipped past and reached Lysari Prime. Captain Elias Wren died in that explosion. So did his crew, but their story did not end there. Wren's final transmission was a simple message: "We are not your subjects, we are your equals, and we are done kneeling." That message, paired with the footage of the Ardent Dawn's heroic charge, spread across the human colonies like wildfire. It wasn't just a story, it was a spark, the kind that catches dry timber and becomes a blaze. Protests erupted. Sympathetic alien species questioned the Order's tactics. Human militia groups that had trained in secrecy for decades now began openly recruiting. Sleeper cells awakened. Rogue I disseminated the Written Protocol detailing how humans could disrupt Order infrastructure, communications, and control hubs. What had been whispered in corners now rang from every channel: "We are not your subjects." The Galactic Order dismissed it all as sentimental rebellion. They thought it would pass. They didn't understand that something fundamental had shifted. The moment Captain Wren chose sacrifice over submission, he became more than a man. He became a symbol. The spark had been struck. The Empires didn't know it yet, but their fire had already begun. The fire spread faster than even the most radical human insurgents could have predicted. Within weeks of the Ardent Dawn incident, colonies that had once maintained a veneer of loyalty to the Galactic Order erupted in coordinated defiance. Infrastructure that had functioned for centuries under the control of the Order began to fail, not because of technological errors, but because the humans responsible for maintaining them stopped obeying. Orbital stations were seized, customs beacons overwritten, and data vaults looted. Each act was small in isolation, but together they formed a networked rebellion fueled not by centralized command, but by a shared, burning will. The Order tried to clamp down quickly. Shock fleets were deployed to key human systems, and compliance protocols were enforced through martial law. But they underestimated not just humanity's resolve, but the sheer scale of its adaptability. You see, the Order had always viewed humans as a young, scattered species, industrious, yes, but fundamentally limited by their chaotic nature. What they didn't grasp was that chaos, for humans, was a crucible. While the Order built stability through hierarchy, humans thrived through flexibility. Leaders emerged where needed, disappeared when compromised, and were instantly replaced by others ready to rise. It was not a rebellion of generals and admirals. It was one of engineers, miners, teachers, medics, exobiologists, and freight haulers. Everyone had a role. Everyone had a reason. One of the most iconic moments of this stage in the uprising came from the backwater moon of Thessalar Roman 7. A mining colony of barely 8,000 humans, Thessala had no official weapons, no military training, and no way to defend itself. But when the Order dispatched a cruiser to establish control and re-educate the populace, the miners didn't run. They rigged the magnetic rails of their ore extractors to fire improvised projectiles, dense rock masses traveling at kinetic velocities. They lured the cruiser into low orbit with a false emergency beacon. When the ship hovered above the colony to land, the miners fired. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't clean, but it worked. The cruiser lost hull integrity and burned up in the atmosphere. Thessala was never retaken. The galaxy had never seen humans like this. Not the humans who negotiated at council chambers or filed petitions for better trade routes. These were humans sharpened by hardship and enraged by injustice. Humans who had learned every dirty trick the galaxy had to offer and now turned those tricks against their former masters. In the Dayton, the phrase "iron pulse" began trending, a term born from the realization that no matter how hard the Order struck, humanity pulsed back harder, stronger, more unified. The resistance was not random, it was intelligent. Data couriers embedded AI protocols within common transmission hubs to confuse Order monitoring systems. Human linguists developed false dialects to mask strategic orders as casual speech. Starship designers created modular vessels that could switch between trade and assault configurations within hours. Every time the Order adapted, humans changed faster. Every attempt to instill fear only strengthened resolve. Entire fleets went rogue, defecting from the small fraction of humans still loyal to the Order. It wasn't long before the phrase Galactic Order became synonymous with a fading past, a ghost clinging to outdated supremacy. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were evolving mid-conflict. This wasn't just rebellion. It was metamorphosis, and the rest of the galaxy began to take notice. The spark was now aflame, and flames spread. While the Galactic Order scrambled to suppress the uprising, other alien civilizations that had long watched humanity with a mixture of caution and curiosity began to reassess their views. The humans had been considered unpredictable and impulsive, a species driven more by emotion than strategy. But now, across the stars, beings who once scoffed at humanity's potential started to reevaluate everything they thought they knew. Some watched with concern, others with admiration, and a few with fear. The first to break ranks from the traditional Order alliance were the Vierxi, an amphibious race known for their neutrality and technological prowess. The Vierxi had long kept to their oceanic worlds, maintaining a quiet truce with the Order while supplying them with critical navigation algorithms. But after leaked footage showed human children on Narration Roman 3 being herded into containment pens during a crackdown, the Virxi government severed all contracts with the Order and opened its data relays to the Resistance. This move shocked the galactic community, not because of the act itself, but because of the symbolism behind it. The Virxi had not taken sides in a conflict for over 4 centuries. That silence was now broken. Their statement was brief: "This is not rebellion, this is reclamation." From there, support trickled in from unexpected places. The Threnari, a race of bioluminescent nomads who had long traded with human border colonies, began smuggling supplies to resistance fighters. The Brelax, highly logical insectoids who prized order above all else, released a research paper titled The Human Conflict Engine, which concluded that the human mind possessed an emergent capacity for adaptive warfare previously unrecorded among known sentient species. To the Brelax, humanity was not merely unpredictable. It was evolving at a rate too fast to measure by standard scientific methods. They advised their leadership not to interfere with the human conflict, warning that the trajectory of this species cannot be predicted by current models. Meanwhile, within the Order itself, cracks began to form. Several alien officers who had served alongside human auxiliary forces began to question the official propaganda. Many recalled moments of unexpected loyalty, bravery, or compassion from their human counterparts, moments that clashed with the official narrative of humans as rebellious primitives. A few defected quietly. Some sent anonymous messages to human channels, offering intelligence or tactical data, and some paid for their sympathy with their lives, but the tide had turned. Humanity's resistance was no longer viewed as a fringe insurrection. It had become a cultural reckoning that reverberated through the stars. Entire subcultures of non-human youth across the galaxy began adopting human music, human art, even human language. On trading stations and black market hubs, graffiti in Terran Standard began to appear on walls and airlocks. "We remember Ren. Our fight is won. Fire, not chains." The movement was no longer bound by species. It had become ideological. To stand with humanity was to stand against tyranny, and that message found fertile ground in the minds of the young, the oppressed, and the visionary. On the edges of Order territory, hybrid fleets, comprised of human rebels and sympathetic alien defectors, began forming coalitions, not just to fight, but to plan, to reimagine what the galaxy could look like after the fire finished burning the old world down. In the galactic void, a whisper began to echo, a question once unthinkable, now asked in hushed tones even in the halls of power. What if the future belongs to them? Humanity had always been underestimated, by its enemies, by its allies, even by itself. Throughout its turbulent rise, humans had been called many things: reckless, emotional, chaotic, short-sighted, and yet these very traits had become the seeds of their evolution. After centuries of conflict, subjugation, rebellion, and resurgence, humanity was no longer simply reacting to threats. It was shaping the battlefield itself, technologically, tactically, and philosophically. The fire that had consumed the old empires had also forged something new in the crucible of struggle, a unified purpose. No longer divided by the flags of Earth nations or the corporate creeds of deep space conglomerates, humans had come to recognize that survival wasn't just about holding ground or retaliating. It was about defining the future on their own terms. Their fleets, once a patchwork of outdated warships and modified freighters, had evolved into mobile fortresses of ingenuity. The standard human warship no longer resembled its earlier counterparts. It was modular, decentralized, and heavily AA augmented. Each ship could function as a carrier, a gunship, a forge, or a medic bay, depending on need. Human engineers had embraced a design philosophy called fluid form warfare, allowing ships to change structure in real time during combat using nanoframe hulls and adaptive armor plating. Where the Order relied on hierarchy and rigid command protocols, human fleets operated more like neural networks. If a command node was destroyed, information rerouted instantly. If a captain fell, the system assigned leadership dynamically, sometimes even to a trained AI, if it determined that was the best path to mission success. In some battles, human units fought without a single centralized command, executing complex maneuvers purely through pre-coordinated behavioral algorithms and situational autonomy. But perhaps even more terrifying to the remnants of the Galactic Order was the transformation in human warfare philosophy. They no longer sought just to win, they sought to liberate and uplift. In systems once ruled with fear, humans arrived with aid convoys, medics, and translators, treating alien populations not as pawns or threats, but as future allies. Entire planets that had been subjected to the Order's taxation and repression turned overnight. Not because of superior firepower, but because of the ideological shockwave that came with human presence. To them, humans were no longer a species, they were a movement. A living example that even the most subjugated people could rise, unite, and burn down the institutions that had chained them for generations. Even human communication had evolved. What once was a cultural weakness, too many languages, dialects, and emotional expressions, had become a diplomatic weapon. Using advanced linguistic AI, human emissaries could interface with almost any alien race without delay, bypassing mistranslation, emotional nuance loss, or cultural misunderstanding. They didn't just talk, they connected. In negotiations, humans weren't merely convincing, they were inspiring. The stories of survival from Earth's post-collapse zones, the heroism of colony defense corps, the sacrifices of civilians to save orbital stations, all became mythologies that spread through alien networks faster than propaganda could suppress them. Children of other worlds began to wear the Terran Phoenix emblem not as a symbol of war, but as a beacon of hope. At the heart of it all was something no empire, no superintelligent AI, no ancient council could replicate: the human soul. That indomitable, ever-burning will to live free, to push boundaries, to build anew from ashes. The same fire that once drove humans to explore space now lit the path for entire civilizations who had forgotten how to hope. Humanity had ascended not just in power, but in meaning, and the stars, long thought to be cold and indifferent, now echoed with their legacy. The final frontier wasn't space. It was the idea that freedom, once sparked, could ignite the cosmos. In the wake of war, once the last fleet burned and the final cries of empires fell silent in the void, humanity stood upon a precipice not as conquerors, but as custodians of something far greater than dominion. The ashes of 1,000 battles drifted through space like solemn reminders of the cost of awakening. But out of this devastation emerged not ruin, but rebirth. Humanity had earned more than survival. It had earned a voice, and with it came a responsibility few civilizations had ever borne. No longer seen as mere aggressors or rebels, humans were now regarded as architects of a new order. Not a galactic regime built on subjugation or fear, but a council of equals, forged through shared resistance, won respect and mutual vision. What began as the survival of a species evolved into the foundation of a new civilization among the stars, diverse, cooperative, and driven by the memory of what must never be repeated. The galactic reformation was not instantaneous. It took years to stabilize the chaos left by the collapse of the old order, but the groundwork laid by humanity's coalition of rebels and allies, called the Accord of Free Worlds, became the basis for something extraordinary. Representatives from liberated planets, formerly subjugated races, and new human frontier colonies came together not to rule, but to listen. Debates raged, cultures clashed, priorities diverged, but the very act of cooperation in the aftermath of fire was a victory in itself. And at the heart of these discussions stood human diplomats, veterans, engineers, and philosophers, not giving orders, but offering lessons carved from the blood and flame of history. It was a renaissance born of ruin. Human-led initiatives saw the rebuilding of devastated ecologies, the preservation of ancient alien archives that the Order had erased or silenced, and the creation of mixed species academies where knowledge could flow freely, without fear of censorship or oppression. AI constructs, once used for war and espionage, were repurposed into cultural translators, trauma counselors, and creative collaborators. One of the most popular interstellar art collectives in the new era was a cooperative founded by a former human gorilla tactician and a Threnari light sculptor. Their exhibitions told stories of pain, resilience, and transcendence, echoes of a war humanity had neither wanted nor glorified, but had endured and emerged from transformed. The transformation reached even further. For the first time in recorded galactic history, frontier worlds began developing not around trade exploitation or military outposts, but around centers of learning, peace, and innovation. Cities sprang up not to mine resources, but to harvest ideas. Humanity, once forced to adopt the weapons and philosophies of its oppressors, had now become the model others followed. It was no longer just about reclaiming Earth's pride. It was about igniting the stars with a vision of unity forged through fire. Yet, even as peace took root, the memory of conflict was never erased. In every academy and alliance chamber, the tale of humanity's rise was taught not as a legend of triumph, but as a cautionary legacy. The spark that burned empires, as the story came to be known, became a moral axis for generations to come, a reminder that when injustice is allowed to calcify into law, and when a species is pushed too far, it will rise, not in blind rage, but with purpose, fury, and clarity. In this, humans became more than survivors. They became guardians of vigilance. The stars, once ruled by cold order and distant tyranny, now pulsed with new life, chaotic, creative, vibrant. And as the galaxy looked to its future, it did so with a reverence for the species that had once been written off as volatile, emotional, and erratic, for it was through those very flaws that humanity discovered its greatest strength, the refusal to be extinguished. In that enduring spark, they gave the stars their fire back.